Racist white woman humiliates a black man on the plane, and then his true identity is revealed. The cramped confines of an airplane cabin can reveal the ugliest parts of human nature or showcase our greatest capacity for redemption. This is the story of both, a chance encounter at 35,000 feet that would change multiple lives forever. Marcus Johnson settled into his first-class window seat on Flight 2187 from Atlanta to San Francisco, exhausted but satisfied after closing a deal that would help thousands. He wore simple jeans and a worn Howard University sweatshirt, comfort clothes for the 6-hour journey home. His weathered leather messenger bag contained documents worth millions, though nothing about his relaxed demeanor suggested this. At 42, Marcus had mastered the art of moving through the world quietly despite his accomplishments. He closed his eyes briefly, savoring the moment of peace before the cabin filled. The soft ping of his phone interrupted the silence, a text from his daughter Zora. "Knock 'em dead at the keynote tomorrow, Dad. The world needs to hear what you have to say." A smile crossed his face. If only she knew he'd almost canceled the speech. Public recognition had never been his goal. The commotion started while Marcus was stowing his bag. A sharp, entitled voice cut through the pre-flight murmur. "Excuse me, I believe there's been a mistake. I specifically requested 3A and I need to be seated there." Marcus glanced up. A white woman in her 50s with an expensive haircut and designer clothes was speaking to the flight attendant. Corinne Whitfield, though Marcus didn't know her name yet, was pointing at her ticket with manicured fingers that trembled slightly with indignation. "Ma'am, your assigned seat is 3C just across the aisle," the young flight attendant, Sophia, explained patiently. "Both are aisle seats in first class." "That's not acceptable. I always sit by the window, always. Can't you just move whoever is 3A? Marcus felt rather than saw her gaze slide to him, assessing and dismissing in an instant. He continued organizing his belongings, already familiar with what would likely come next. "Sir," Sophia addressed him apologetically, "would you mind?" "No need to ask him," Corinne interrupted. "I'm sure he wouldn't mind taking my seat. It's just across the aisle." Marcus looked up fully now, meeting Corinne's eyes. "Actually, I selected this seat specifically for the view during landing. I'm sorry, but I'd prefer to stay here." The flash of shock across Corinne's face would have been comical if it weren't so telling. Her lips pressed into a thin line as she processed his refusal. "Do you know who I am?" she asked, voice lowered but piercing. Marcus smiled politely. "I'm afraid I don't." "Corinne Whitfield. I'm Executive Vice President at Criterion Financial. I've flown this route twice monthly for 15 years, always in 3A. "Well, today you'll experience the adventure of 3C, Marcus replied, his tone pleasant but firm. "I hear the view of the clouds is equally spectacular." A flush crept up Corinne's neck. "This is ridiculous. I have status with this airline." "As do I," Marcus said simply, turning back to his book. A biography of Katherine Johnson, the NASA mathematician. Corinne's eyes narrowed at the book cover, then at his sweatshirt. Something in her demeanor shifted, becoming more openly hostile. "Fine, whatever." She settled into 3C with exaggerated displeasure, ordering a champagne before they'd even taxied. Marcus could feel her watching him, quick, sideways glances filled with assumptions. He'd experienced this throughout his life. The subtle calculations people made when they saw his skin color, the mental arithmetic of determining his worth and place in their world. 30 minutes into the flight, the confrontation escalated. Marcus had declined the first beverage service, focused on reviewing notes for tomorrow's speech. When the flight attendant returned, he requested water. "Tap water," Corinne muttered, just loud enough to be heard. "How adventurous." Marcus ignored her, thanking Sophia for the drink. "Excuse me," Corinne continued, louder now. "Could you ask him to give me a bit more armrest room? He's encroaching on my space." Marcus glanced down. The armrest between them was firmly in neutral territory. "Ma'am, everyone has their allocated space," Sophia explained diplomatically. "Well, he seems to think he's entitled to more than his share," Corinne continued. "First my window seat, now this." The businessman across the aisle looked uncomfortable, suddenly engrossed in his laptop. Two passengers behind them had fallen silent, listening. Ma'am, Mr. Johnson isn't in your seat. He's in his assigned seat, Sophia clarified. Johnson, is that what he told you? Karen scoffed, her voice dripping with suspicion. Did anyone actually check his boarding pass? The cabin grew noticeably quieter. Marcus felt a familiar heaviness settle in his chest, the weight of other people's prejudice. Yes, ma'am, every passenger's boarding pass is scanned before boarding, Sophia said, her professional smile growing strained. Karen wasn't deterred. Well, I just find it odd that someone like him would be in first class, that's all. The words hung in the air, their implication unmistakable. Someone like me, Marcus asked quietly. You know what I mean, Karen said, glancing at his worn sweatshirt. This is premium class. People save for months for these seats. Or they work hard and purchase them, Marcus replied evenly. Exactly my point. Karen took a long sip of her champagne. I've worked for everything I have. As have I. Really, what do you do, Mr. Johnson? Professional athlete, rapper. Her voice carried a mocking edge. The businessman across the aisle now stared openly, no longer pretending not to listen. Ma'am, Sophia intervened, please keep your voice down. I just asked a simple question, Karen protested. I'm making conversation. No, Marcus said, closing his book. You're making assumptions, there's a difference. Oh, don't be so sensitive, Karen scoffed. People are too easily offended these days. Would you have asked that question if I were white? Marcus asked. Karen's eyes widened in feigned innocence. Race has nothing to do with it. I'm just surprised to see someone dressed like you in first class. Marcus understood then that this was no simple seat dispute. Karen needed to establish hierarchy to confirm her worldview that placed him beneath her. For a moment, he considered letting it go, as he'd done countless times before. It would be easier. But something about her entitled certainty made him reconsider. To answer your question, he said calmly, I'm an engineer. I design water purification systems for communities without access to clean water. Karen's expression flickered with momentary confusion before resetting to skepticism. How convenient, and that pays for first-class tickets. Among other things, Marcus said. Right, Karen smirked. I'm sure your engineering is very lucrative. The way she emphasized engineering made it clear she didn't believe him. Marcus felt the familiar anger rising, not hot and explosive, but cold and dense, like a neutron star. Ms. Whitfield, was it? He asked, his voice steady. What exactly is it about me that you find so improbable? My education, my success, my ability to afford this seat, or is it simply the color of my skin? Karen's face flushed. Don't you dare accuse me of racism. I have colleagues who are black. Of course you do, Marcus nodded. I'm sure they find your company as delightful as I do. A few muffled laughs came from somewhere behind them. Karen's flush deepened. You're twisting my words, she hissed. I simply questioned how someone dressed like a college student could afford first class. And yet, Marcus observed, you didn't question the white gentleman in 4B wearing jeans and a t-shirt. The businessman across the aisle suddenly found his safety card fascinating. That's different, Karen insisted. How? He looks professional, despite his casual attire. Yes. I see, Marcus said quietly, and I don't look professional because. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, Marcus thought she might actually reflect on her behavior. Instead, she reached for her phone. I don't have to justify myself to you, she said, furiously typing. In fact, I'm going to file a complaint about this entire situation. This airline should screen its passengers more carefully. The comment hung in the air, its implication unmistakable. Screen for what exactly? Marcus asked. Karen ignored him, continuing to type. The service on this airline has gone downhill completely. First, they give away my seat to someone who clearly doesn't belong here, then they allow him to harass me. Several passengers were openly watching now. Sophia looked increasingly uncomfortable. Ma'am, she said firmly, if you continue to disturb other passengers, I'll need to report this to the captain. Oh, so I'm disturbing people by defending myself, Karen's voice rose. Meanwhile, he's allowed to intimidate me. Marcus had remained calm, his hands folded in his lap. I haven't moved or raised my voice, Ms. Whitfield. You're trying to make me look racist. I haven't made you anything, Marcus replied. Your words and actions are your own. Karen turned to the surrounding passengers. Is anyone else seeing this? He's playing the race card because I called him out for taking my seat. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the most disinterested passengers were watching now. Marcus felt the familiar weight of being a spectacle, of private indignities made public. The businessman across the aisle finally spoke up. Ma'am, he's in his assigned seat. I heard the flight attendant confirm it earlier. Stay out of this, Karen snapped. You don't understand what's happening. I think everyone understands exactly what's happening, said an older black woman from the row behind, her voice quiet but clear. Karen twisted in her seat. And what's that supposed to mean? Before anyone could answer, a new voice entered the conversation. The lead flight attendant, Michael, who had approached without them noticing. Is there a problem here? He asked, his expression professional but concerned. Yes, Karen said immediately. I'd like to file a formal complaint. This man, she gestured dismissively at Marcus, took my window seat and has been hostile since boarding. Michael turned to Sophia, who quickly explained the actual situation. I see, Michael said, turning back to Karen. Ma'am, our records show that 3C is your assigned seat. If you'd like to request a specific seat for future flights, you can do so through our app or customer service. This is outrageous, Karen fumed. I'm a loyal customer, platinum status for years, and you're taking his side. There are no sides, ma'am, Michael replied calmly. Just assigned seats. Well, I refuse to sit next to someone who's trying to paint me as a racist, Karen declared. I want to be moved. A heavy silence fell. Marcus felt a familiar mixture of emotions, anger at the injustice, weariness at its predictability, and a peculiar sense of validation. At least this time, the prejudice was out in the open, witnessed by others who couldn't deny its existence. We can see if there are any other available seats, Michael offered, professionally masking any judgment. There better be, Karen said, gathering her belongings. This is completely unacceptable. As Michael escorted Karen toward the back of the first-class cabin to check the manifest, the businessman across the aisle leaned slightly toward Marcus. I'm sorry you had to experience that, he said quietly. Marcus nodded in acknowledgement. It's not the first time, won't be the last. Still wrong, the man replied. For what it's worth, I think you handled it with remarkable grace. Thank you, Marcus said. Sometimes grace is all we have. The older black woman behind him caught his eye and gave him a knowing look, one that contained generations of shared understanding. Marcus returned a slight nod. Some conversations didn't require words. Michael returned a few minutes later. Ms. Whitfield, we've found you a seat in row 10. Premium economy, Karen's voice rose in indignation. I paid for first class. It's the only available option, ma'am. We're at capacity today. This is absolutely unacceptable, Karen insisted. I want to speak to the captain. The captain is flying the aircraft, ma'am, Michael replied, his patience visibly thinning. Your options are to take the available seat in premium economy, for which we'll refund the fare difference, or to remain in your assigned seat, 3C. Karen glared at Marcus as if he were personally responsible for her options. Fine, I'll move, but this isn't over, not by a long shot. As Karen gathered her things, knocking Marcus's book to the floor in the process, accidentally or not, he couldn't be sure, she delivered one final barb. Enjoy feeling special up here with the adults, she said under her breath. Your kind always needs handouts to get ahead. Marcus felt rather than heard the collective intake of breath from those nearby. The comment was just soft enough that the flight attendants might not have caught it, but loud enough for surrounding passengers to hear. The businessman across the aisle started to rise, his face flushed with anger, but Marcus caught his eye and gave a subtle shake of his head. This wasn't the stranger's battle to fight. As Karen was led away, muttering about lawsuits and social media campaigns, an unexpected calm settled over Marcus. He'd been here before, in boardrooms where he was mistaken for janitorial staff, in stores where security followed him, in restaurants where hosts seated white patrons who arrived after him. Sir, Sophia approached cautiously, I want to apologize for what happened. That's not representative of our airline or our values. I know, Marcus assured her. It's not your fault. Can I get you anything? A drink perhaps on the house? Marcus smiled gently. Just some more water would be fine, thank you. As Sophia left to fetch his water, Marcus returned to his book, aware of the occasional glances from other passengers, some sympathetic, others curious, a few uncomfortable. The incident would be cocktail party conversation for them later. You won't believe what happened on my flight today. For Marcus, it was Tuesday. His phone buzzed with another text from Zora. Almost landed. Can't wait to hear about the Atlanta meeting. Marcus smiled despite himself. His daughter's enthusiasm never failed to center him. He typed back, still in the air. Meeting went well, deal signed. Tell your brother I'll help with his science project when I get home. The speech he was set to deliver tomorrow at Stanford suddenly seemed more important than ever. Not because of its potential impact on his business, but because of what it might mean for people like Zora and his son Miles. A world where they wouldn't have to constantly prove their right to exist in spaces others took for granted. 3 hours into the flight, as most passengers dozed or watched movies, a flight attendant Marcus hadn't seen before approached his seat. Mr. Johnson, she asked quietly. Yes. The captain would like to speak with you when you have a moment. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Is everything all right? Yes, sir. He just asked if you could come to the cockpit briefly when it's convenient. Curious, Marcus followed her to the front of the plane. After a brief security check, he was admitted to the cockpit where Captain David Reynolds turned from his instruments with a warm smile. Mr. Johnson, I apologize for the unusual request. I'm David Reynolds. He extended his hand, which Marcus shook. I wanted to personally apologize for what happened earlier. Our crew informed me of the situation. That's very kind but unnecessary, Marcus replied. Your staff handled it well. Perhaps, but that doesn't excuse the experience you had, the captain said. There's another reason I wanted to speak with you, though. He hesitated, looking slightly embarrassed. I recognized your name on the manifest. My daughter is studying environmental engineering because of your TED Talk 3 years ago. Marcus blinked in surprise. The talk had been a reluctant obligation. His business partner Elijah had insisted it would help secure funding for their Nigeria project. That's quite an honor to hear, Marcus said genuinely. She has your book too, Engineering Hope. Made me read it. The captain chuckled. Changed how I think about a lot of things. Your work in Flint was groundbreaking. Marcus felt a familiar discomfort with praise, but also a quiet satisfaction. How is your daughter finding her studies? Challenging, but she's determined. Says she wants to join your fellowship program after graduation. Tell her to apply. We're always looking for passionate people. I will, the captain hesitated. I know this might seem trivial after what happened, but would you mind if I got a photo with you, for my daughter? Not at all, Marcus agreed, though such requests always felt strange to him. His work had never been about personal recognition. After the photo and some discussion about the captain's daughter's studies, Marcus returned to his seat, reflecting on the strange contrast of the day. From Karen's hostility to the captain's admiration, all within the same metal tube hurtling through the sky. The businessman across the aisle caught his eye. Everything okay? Fine, Marcus assured him. Just a quick chat with the captain. The man looked surprised but didn't press further. Marcus returned to his book, though his thoughts were now on tomorrow's speech. Perhaps Elijah was right about the importance of visibility, not for ego, but for the Zoras and Mileses of the world who needed to see what was possible. When the drink cart came around again, the businessman across the aisle ordered 2 scotches and offered one to Marcus. James Harrington, he introduced himself. I figure after that ordeal you could use this as much as I could. Marcus accepted with a nod. Marcus Johnson, and thank you, though I suspect watching was more stressful than experiencing. I've had practice. That's the tragedy of it, James replied, taking a sip. That anyone would have practice dealing with such behavior. He seemed genuinely disturbed by the thought. May I ask what you do, Marcus? For real, not the version you told our delightful former neighbor. Marcus smiled slightly. That wasn't a version. I am an engineer. I design water purification systems. Just water purification, James pressed, studying him, because the captain seemed quite eager to speak with you. Marcus sighed, recognizing the familiar curiosity. I founded Clearwater Technology. We develop sustainable water solutions for underserved communities. James nearly choked on his scotch. You're asterisk that Marcus Johnson, the Marcus Johnson who revolutionized low-cost filtration systems, who stood up to Nestlé in court and won. That was mostly our legal team, Marcus demurred. My firm handled the funding for your Ghana project, James said, visibly impressed. I had no idea I was sitting across from you. The photos in the trade publications must be outdated. I avoid photos when possible, Marcus admitted. The work matters, not my face. James shook his head in disbelief. If Karen had any idea who she was harassing. Would it have mattered? Marcus asked quietly. Should it? The question hung between them. Both men knew the answer. No, James finally said. It shouldn't matter who you are. No one deserves that treatment. Exactly. Marcus took a sip of his scotch. Whether I'm Marcus Johnson of Clearwater Technology or just a man in a Howard sweatshirt, the standard should be the same. James nodded slowly, absorbing the point. You're right, of course, it's just. Just what? There would have been a certain poetic justice in her knowing. Marcus smiled faintly. Perhaps, but I've learned that people like Karen rarely see themselves as the villains in their own stories, no matter the evidence. True enough, James conceded. Still, tomorrow's keynote at the Global Water Innovation Summit is going to be interesting. Aren't you scheduled right after Criterion Financial's sustainability panel? Marcus's eyebrows rose. You're attending the summit. My firm provides venture capital for sustainability startups, James explained. We wouldn't miss it, and Criterion is trying to rebrand as environmentally conscious, though their portfolio suggests otherwise. Criterion, Marcus repeated, the name clicking into place. Karen mentioned she was an executive VP there. James nodded, a mischievous glint in his eye. Executive VP of Public Relations and Corporate Image, to be precise. The person responsible for convincing the world that Criterion cares about more than profit. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Well, Marcus said after a moment, tomorrow should be interesting indeed. To say the least, James agreed, raising his glass in a toast. As the plane began its descent into San Francisco, Marcus gazed out at the golden hour light transforming the landscape below. The Bay Area appeared like a dream, bridges spanning glittering waters, hills rising in gentle slopes, the promise of innovation and progress seemingly built into its geography. Hey everyone watching, if you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. Your support means everything, and I'd love to know which part of the world you're connecting from today. Now, back to our story as Marcus prepares to face an unexpected confrontation. The pilot announced their approach, and Marcus felt the familiar mix of anticipation and weariness that came with landing in a new city, or in this case, returning to one he'd visited countless times for work. His phone buzzed with a text from Elijah. Car will meet you at arrivals. Hotel upgraded you to the presidential suite. CNN wants an interview after your keynote. Say yes this time. Marcus smiled and replied, regular suite is fine. We'll consider CNN if they focus on the technology, not me. The response came immediately. The world needs to see your face, my friend. Black excellence matters. Presidential suite stays, non-negotiable. Their decades-long friendship had always included this push and pull. Elijah urging Marcus toward the spotlight, Marcus preferring to let their work speak for itself. They'd met as undergraduates at Howard, bonded over late-night study sessions, and shared dreams of creating technology that served those most overlooked by progress. After landing, Marcus bid farewell to James with a handshake and a promise to connect at the summit. As he made his way through the terminal, his phone rang with his son's distinctive ringtone. Dad, Miles's excited voice filled his ear. Did you land? How was the flight? Did you get any cool snacks? Marcus laughed, his earlier tension melting away. Just landed, buddy. Flight was fine. Brought you those cookies you like. Yes, the ones with the little chocolate chips inside the other chocolate chips. Those exact ones, Marcus confirmed, weaving through the crowded terminal. How's your science project coming? I think I figured out how to make the solar panel more efficient, but I'm not sure if my calculations are right. Can we work on it tomorrow? Absolutely. I have a speech in the morning, but I'm all yours after that. Is it an important speech? Miles asked. Marcus paused, considering the question with new perspective after the day's events. I think it might be yes. Will people clap a lot? Maybe, Marcus smiled. Would that make it important? Nah, Miles decided. Important is if it helps people like your filters. You're right about that, Marcus agreed, feeling a surge of pride in his son's instincts. Very right. After promising to call before Miles's bedtime, Marcus ended the call and headed toward the exit where Elijah would have a car waiting. As he approached the pickup area, he noticed a commotion, raised voices, and the unmistakable presence of camera flashes. For a moment, he considered finding another exit. Then he recognized one of the voices, high-pitched, indignant, familiar from just hours before. Corinne Whitfield stood surrounded by airport security and what appeared to be journalists. Her face was flushed, her gestures animated as she spoke loudly enough for her voice to carry. Absolutely humiliating treatment. Do you know who I am? I'm speaking at the Global Water Summit tomorrow. This is how San Francisco welcomes environmental leaders. Marcus slowed his pace, intending to slip past unnoticed, but fate had other plans. Mr. Johnson, a voice called out. He turned to see Sophia, the flight attendant, hurrying toward him. You forgot your book on the plane. She handed him the Katherine Johnson biography with a smile. I recognized it right away. My mother loves her work too. Thank you, Marcus said sincerely. This was a gift from my daughter. I would have been devastated to lose it. The exchange, though brief, had drawn attention, including Corinne's. You, she exclaimed, her eyes widening in recognition and fresh anger. You're following me now. Airport security looked confused, glancing between Corinne and Marcus. Ma'am, do you know this gentleman? One officer asked. Know him, he's the one who caused that scene on the plane, the one I told you about. Corinne pointed accusingly. He's stalking me now. Marcus sighed deeply. I'm not following anyone. I'm simply trying to exit the airport, as are hundreds of others. A man in a sharp suit who had been standing with Corinne stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. Corinne, perhaps we should continue this conversation privately. No, David, this is exactly the problem. These people think they can get away with anything these days. The man, David, winced visibly. Corinne, please. Is there a problem here? A new voice entered the conversation. Elijah Williams, Marcus's business partner and oldest friend, approached with the confident stride that had intimidated corporate boardrooms for decades. At 6'4" with impeccably tailored suits and a voice that commanded attention, Elijah was the public face of Clearwater Technology, while Marcus preferred to work behind the scenes. No problem, Marcus assured him. Just a misunderstanding. Ms. Whitfield and I were on the same flight. Elijah's gaze shifted to Corinne, taking in her Criterion Company badge still visible on her lanyard. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Ms. Whitfield, he said smoothly, what a coincidence. I believe we're sharing a stage tomorrow at the summit. Elijah Williams, COO of Clearwater Technology. He extended his hand. Corinne looked momentarily flustered, professional instincts warring with personal feelings. Mr. Williams, yes, of course. I didn't realize. Her eyes darted between Elijah and Marcus, confusion evident. I see you've already met my business partner and our CEO, Marcus Johnson. Elijah continued pleasantly. The color drained from Corinne's face. CEO. Co-founder and CEO, Elijah confirmed. The brilliant mind behind our patented filtration systems that will be featured in tomorrow's keynote. David, who Marcus now realized must be another Criterion executive, looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. There must be some mistake, Corinne stammered. On the plane, he said he was an engineer. He is, Elijah agreed. The best in the business. Stanford PhD at 24, MacArthur Genius Grant at 30, but he's always been modest about his accomplishments. He turned to Marcus. The car's waiting, Marcus. Secretary Wilson's office called again about the federal contract. Marcus nodded, turning to Karen and David. If you'll excuse us, I'm sure we'll have more time to chat at the summit. His tone was perfectly professional, betraying none of the satisfaction he might have felt at Karen's obvious distress. As they walked away, leaving Karen speechless for perhaps the first time in her professional life, Elijah leaned in. Want to tell me what that was about? A long story, Marcus sighed. One best told over dinner. How's the San Francisco team? Eager to see you. The prototype exceeded expectations in the latest trial. Elijah cast a glance back at Karen, who was now engaged in an intense, hushed conversation with David. Though I'm more interested in why a Criterion executive looks like she's seen a ghost after meeting you. Let's just say Ms. Whitfield and I have different perspectives on who belongs where, Marcus replied. Elijah raised an eyebrow. One of those. One of those, Marcus confirmed. Well, her day is about to get worse, Elijah said with a slight smile. The summit organizers called. They've rearranged the schedule. Our keynote now directly precedes Criterion's panel, not follows it. Something about maximizing audience engagement. Is that so? Marcus mused. Interesting timing. Indeed, Elijah agreed. Almost as if someone made a call after hearing about an incident on a certain flight. Marcus gave his friend a suspicious look. You work fast. I have no idea what you're talking about, Elijah replied innocently, though I may have had a fascinating conversation with a Captain Reynolds earlier. For the first time since boarding the flight in Atlanta, Marcus laughed, a genuine, unburdened sound. You're incorrigible. I prefer strategic, Elijah countered. Now about that CNN interview. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the San Francisco fog having temporarily retreated to provide a rare, unobstructed view of the bay. Marcus stood at the window of his hotel suite, presidential, as Elijah had insisted, watching the city come alive while mentally reviewing his keynote address. The speech had originally been filled with technical specifications and market projections, important information, but hardly inspiring. After yesterday's encounter, however, Marcus had spent half the night rewriting it, infusing the data with purpose, the statistics with soul. His phone buzzed with a text from Zora. Knock 'em dead, Dad. Miles and I will be watching the live stream. The summit was being held at the Moscone Center, a sprawling complex in the heart of San Francisco. As Marcus and Elijah arrived, they were immediately ushered to the VIP lounge where industry leaders mingled before the day's sessions. Marcus Johnson, a booming voice called out. Bernard Chen, founder of Aquatech and one of Marcus's oldest industry rivals, approached with open arms. The water wizard himself, how the hell are you? They embraced warmly. Theirs was a rivalry based on mutual respect rather than animosity. Bernard, Marcus greeted him. Congratulations on the Singapore contract, impressive work. Not as impressive as your Nairobi implementation, Bernard replied generously. The scalability is remarkable. You're making the rest of us look bad. Their good-natured conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the entrance. Karen, Whitfield had arrived with a contingent of Criterion executives, including David from the airport. She faltered visibly upon seeing Marcus, then straightened her shoulders and steered her group toward the opposite side of the room. Bernard noticed the interaction with interest, not a fan of Criterion. Let's just say Ms. Whitfield and I have had our differences, Marcus replied diplomatically. Haven't we all? Bernard chuckled. Though word is their sustainability initiative is more smoke than substance. Typical greenwashing to distract from their investments in companies draining aquifers in drought-stricken regions. Before Marcus could respond, a summit organizer approached. Mr. Johnson, we're ready for your sound check whenever you are. The keynote stage was impressive, a sweeping design with state-of-the-art visual capabilities and seating for thousands. As Marcus tested his microphone, he noticed James Harrington from the flight entering with a group of venture capitalists. James spotted him and offered a friendly wave. Backstage, Marcus found an unexpected visitor waiting, Captain Reynolds, now in civilian clothes. Hope you don't mind my stopping by, the captain said. My daughter would never forgive me if I didn't attend your speech. She's in the audience already, practically vibrating with excitement. I'm honored, Marcus said genuinely. I'd love to meet her afterward. She'd be thrilled, Captain Reynolds beamed. And I hope yesterday's unpleasantness didn't sour your perception of our airline. That passenger's behavior was unacceptable. As I said yesterday, your crew handled it well, Marcus assured him. These incidents happen everywhere, unfortunately. They shouldn't, the captain said firmly. Not on my aircraft, not anywhere. Their conversation was interrupted by the summit director announcing 5 minutes until the program began. As Captain Reynolds left to find his seat, Elijah approached with a gleam in his eye. Full house, he reported. Standing room only, and guess who's in the front row? Criterion's delegation, Marcus guessed. Complete with our friend Ms. Whitfield, looking like she's attending a funeral rather than a keynote. Marcus shook his head. This isn't about embarrassing her, Elijah. Of course not, Elijah agreed, though the mischief hadn't left his eyes. It's about the work, always has been. The summit director approached. We're ready for you, Mr. Johnson. As Marcus stepped onto the stage, the applause was thunderous, far more enthusiastic than he'd anticipated. He moved to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and surveyed the crowd. Corinne Whitfield sat rigidly in the front row, flanked by David and other Criterion executives. James Harrington was a few rows back, giving him a subtle thumbs up. And scattered throughout the audience were faces that reflected his own. Young black engineers and scientists hungry for representation in spaces traditionally closed to them. It was for them, Marcus realized, that visibility mattered most. Not for ego or vindication, but for possibility, for the simple, revolutionary statement that they belonged. Good morning, he began, his voice steady and clear. My name is Marcus Johnson, and I believe that access to clean water is not a privilege but a fundamental human right. The audience leaned forward collectively, captivated by the quiet authority in his voice. Yesterday on my flight here, I was reminded of something important, he continued. That sometimes the most valuable resource isn't what we can extract from the earth, but what we can learn from each other's humanity, or lack thereof. A ripple of reaction moved through the crowd. In the front row, Corinne Whitfield stiffened. The technologies I'm about to share with you today aren't important because they're innovative, although they are. They're not important because they're profitable, although they can be. They're important because they serve people who have been systematically overlooked, undervalued, and excluded from the benefits of progress. For the next 45 minutes, Marcus delivered the most personal and powerful speech of his career. He wove technical specifications with stories from Flint, Michigan, and Nairobi, Kenya. He connected profit margins with human dignity, and he challenged the industry leaders present to recognize that their greatest obligation wasn't to shareholders, but to future generations who would inherit the world they were shaping. Innovation without compassion is just expensive indifference, he concluded. And we can no longer afford that luxury, not when children are dying from preventable waterborne diseases, not when communities are being poisoned for profit, and certainly not when we have the knowledge and resources to do better. The standing ovation began before his final words had faded. It continued for nearly 5 minutes, an eternity in summit time. Marcus stood awkwardly, unused to such adulation, until Elijah joined him on stage for the Q&A portion. The questions were thoughtful and challenging, exactly what Marcus preferred. He fielded inquiries about technical specifications, implementation timelines, and scaling challenges with expertise and candor. Then a hand rose from the middle section, Captain Reynolds' daughter, as it turned out. Dr. Johnson, she began, her voice clear and confident. Your filtration system has revolutionized water access in rural communities, but implementation often faces political obstacles. How do you navigate power structures that benefit from maintaining the status quo? It was an excellent question, one that cut to the heart of their greatest challenge. By remembering that technology alone is never the complete solution, Marcus answered. Systems of power exist to self-perpetuate. Our approach combines technological innovation with community empowerment. We insist that local residents aren't just recipients but partners who ultimately own and operate the systems we install. When clean water becomes a source of community autonomy rather than dependency, those power structures begin to shift. The young woman nodded appreciatively, clearly satisfied with his response. As the Q&A concluded, the summit director announced a 15-minute break before the Criterion panel. Corinne Whitfield and her team hurried backstage, presumably to regroup after Marcus's tour de force. In the green room, Marcus found himself surrounded by well-wishers and potential investors. Bernard Chen approached with renewed respect. "You've raised the bar again, my friend," he said. "That wasn't just a keynote, it was a manifesto." "Just speaking my truth," Marcus replied modestly. "Your truth is exactly what this industry needs," Bernard insisted. "Too much techno-optimism, not enough human-centered design." He lowered his voice. "By the way, Criterion's team looks shell-shocked. Whatever history you have with them, I'd say you've won this round decisively." Marcus was about to respond when a summit aide approached. "Dr. Johnson, Ms. Whitfield is asking if she could speak with you privately before her panel. She says it's urgent." Elijah, overhearing, raised an eyebrow. "Want me to join you?" "No need," Marcus decided. "I'll handle this." He was directed to a small conference room where Corinne Whitfield waited alone, her earlier bravado notably diminished. She stood as he entered, her posture rigid with what appeared to be practiced composure. "Mr. Johnson, Dr. Johnson," she corrected herself. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me." Marcus nodded but remained silent, curious about her purpose. "I want to," Corinne paused, visibly struggling. "That is, I feel I should address what happened on the flight." "I'm listening," Marcus said neutrally. "My behavior was unprofessional," she managed, the words clearly difficult for her. "I made assumptions that were incorrect." Marcus noted what she wasn't saying, that those assumptions were racist, that her behavior was harmful, that she recognized the fundamental injustice of her actions. "Is that an apology, Ms. Whitfield?" he asked directly. Color rose in her cheeks. "Yes, I apologize if you felt offended." "I didn't feel offended," Marcus clarified. "I was treated unjustly based on racial prejudice. There's a difference." Corinne's composure faltered. "This is exactly why these conversations are impossible. I'm trying to extend an olive branch here." "Are you?" Marcus questioned. "Or are you trying to protect Criterion's relationship with Clearwater Technology now that you know who I am?" The flash of panic in her eyes confirmed his suspicion. "Our companies have mutual interests," she said carefully. "It would be unfortunate if a personal misunderstanding affected potential collaborations." "So this is damage control, not remorse," Marcus observed. "That's not fair," Corinne protested. "I'm acknowledging that I misjudged you." "Because of my title," Marcus pointed out, "not because your behavior was fundamentally wrong." He studied her for a moment. "Would you have sought this conversation if I were still just an anonymous black man in a Howard sweatshirt?" Corinne's silence was answer enough. "That's the problem, Ms. Whitfield," Marcus continued quietly. "Your apology isn't for what you did, it's for who you did it to, and that distinction matters." "What do you want from me?" Corinne asked, frustration evident. "I've said I'm sorry, what more can I do?" Marcus considered her question seriously. "You could reflect on why you immediately assumed I didn't belong in first class. You could examine why you felt entitled to question my presence there. You could consider how many times you've made similar assumptions about people who look like me, but didn't happen to be CEOs who could affect your company's bottom line." Corinne's expression hardened. "You have no idea who I am or what I believe. Making this about race is." "It was always about race," Marcus interrupted, his voice still calm but firm. "From the moment you questioned my presence in that seat, it was about race. Pretending otherwise doesn't change that reality, it just makes honest resolution impossible." For a moment, something like genuine reflection crossed Corinne's face. Then her professional mask slipped back into place. "Will this affect potential partnerships between our companies?" she asked directly. "That depends," Marcus replied. "Is Criterion genuinely committed to sustainable water practices, or is your panel today just performance?" "Our sustainability initiatives are substantial," Corinne insisted. "Including your investments in companies draining aquifers in drought-affected regions?" Marcus asked, echoing Bernard's earlier comment. Karen faltered. Those investments are being reevaluated as part of our new environmental strategy. I see, Marcus said, unconvinced. Well, Ms. Whitfield, Clearwater Technology evaluates partnerships based on actions, not intentions. If Criterion demonstrates genuine commitment to ethical water practices, we're open to collaboration. If not, we'll continue our work with partners whose values align with ours. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I don't think you're uniquely prejudiced. You're a product of systems designed to perpetuate certain hierarchies and perspectives. The question is whether you're willing to recognize those systems and work to dismantle them, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Karen remained silent, her expression unreadable. Your panel starts in 5 minutes, Marcus reminded her. Good luck. He left her standing alone in the conference room, her carefully constructed professional identity visibly shaken. In the hallway, he encountered David, the Criterion executive from the airport. The man looked uncomfortable but determined. Dr. Johnson, he began hesitantly, I want to apologize for not speaking up yesterday, on the plane and at the airport. It was wrong and I should have said something. The unexpected accountability took Marcus by surprise. Thank you for acknowledging that. I've worked with Karen for years, David continued. Her behavior yesterday wasn't isolated, and I've been complicit through my silence. That's an important recognition, Marcus said genuinely. Your speech today, especially the part about expensive indifference, it hit home. David glanced toward the conference room where Karen remained. I've been drafting a proposal for Criterion to divest from those aquifer draining operations Bernard Chen mentioned. Karen's been blocking it. After today? Well, I think I need to take it directly to the board. That would be a substantive step, Marcus acknowledged. It might cost me my job, David admitted. But I have kids. They deserve a better world than the one we're creating with business as usual. If it does cost you your job, Marcus said, call me. People with your emerging conscience are exactly who we need at Clearwater. David looked startled, then grateful. I might take you up on that. As Criterion's panel began, notably less attended than Marcus's keynote, Marcus found Elijah waiting near the exit. Ready to head out? Elijah asked. Or do you want to watch Criterion squirm a bit more? Let's go, Marcus decided. I promised Miles I'd help with his science project this afternoon. Ah yes, the solar panel optimization. He called me twice yesterday to discuss theoretical efficiency limits, Elijah chuckled. That boy is going to revolutionize renewable energy before he's 20. Just like his sister will revolutionize water policy, Marcus said proudly. Generation Z isn't waiting for permission to change the world. As they left the summit, Marcus's phone buzzed with a notification. The CNN interview request had been amended. They now wanted both him and his family, with a focus on raising the next generation of black scientists and engineers. For once, Marcus didn't hesitate. Tell them yes, he told Elijah. It's time Zora and Miles saw themselves represented in these spaces, not because their father is exceptional, but because they deserve to be there as much as anyone else. About time, Elijah approved. The world needs to see not just what you've built, but who you're building it for. On the drive to Marcus's home in Oakland, where his children were staying with their grandmother during his business trip, Elijah's phone chimed with an email alert. Well, he said, scanning the message. David from Criterion just sent a confidential proposal. They want to partner with us on implementing filtration systems in the same communities where their previous investments caused water scarcity. Genuine atonement or PR move, Marcus wondered. Hard to say, Elijah admitted, but he's bypassed Karen entirely, sent this directly to both of us. Interesting, Marcus mused. Keep an eye on it. If they're serious about structural change rather than surface repair, it could be significant. The car turned onto the tree-lined street where Marcus's mother lived, where he'd grown up dreaming of creating technologies that would help communities like his own. As they approached the house, he could see Zora and Miles waiting on the porch, excitement evident in their posture. The real VIPs, Marcus smiled, already rolling down his window. Dad, Miles called out, racing down the steps. Your speech was amazing. All my friends were watching the live stream. The comments section blew up when you talked about Flint, Zora added, more reserved but equally pleased. People are calling you the water warrior. Marcus laughed, embracing them both. A warrior? Hardly, just an engineer trying to solve problems. An engineer who just changed the conversation about water equity on national television, his mother corrected, appearing in the doorway. Dr. Josephine Johnson, renowned biochemist and Marcus's first role model, regarded her son with quiet pride. Well done, Marcus. Your father would have been so proud. The mention of his late father, who had died of cancer when Marcus was in graduate school, brought a familiar ache. Thomas Johnson had been a plumber who understood water systems better than most engineers, though he'd never had the opportunity for formal education. His practical knowledge had informed Marcus's earliest designs. I think Miles has surpassed both of us already, Marcus deflected, ruffling his son's hair. Tell Uncle Elijah about your solar panel modifications. As Miles launched into an enthusiastic explanation, Marcus checked his phone one last time before fully engaging with his family. There was a message from James Harrington. Criterion's stock dropped 3% after your keynote. Corinne Whitfield just left the panel early, family emergency. David's killing it, though, talking about substantive change and ethical imperatives. You've started something important here. Drinks soon? Jay. Marcus smiled and put his phone away. The incident on the plane felt distant now, less important than Miles's excitement about solar efficiency or Zora's thoughtful questions about water policy. Yet he knew its significance extended beyond that metal tube at 35,000 feet. It was a microcosm of the bigger battles being fought in boardrooms and communities, in policies and practices. Change happened in both grand gestures and small confrontations, in keynote speeches that shifted industry conversations, and in quiet moments of standing one's ground when others questioned your right to occupy space. As he followed his family into the house, Marcus reflected that perhaps the most revolutionary act wasn't building water systems that served the underserved, though that mattered enormously. Perhaps it was simply existing authentically in spaces where others believed you didn't belong, creating room for those who would come after you, and refusing to let others' limitations define your possibilities. That evening, as he helped Miles with his solar panel calculations, Marcus received one final message. A summit attendee had posted a photo of David presenting Criterion's new water equity initiative, with Corinne noticeably absent from the stage. The caption read, "Sometimes the right people end up in the right seats after all. Water justice, the Johnson effect." Marcus showed the message to Elijah, who had stayed for dinner at Dr. Josephine's insistence. The Johnson effect, Elijah mused. I like that. Sounds like something that might catch on. Let's hope what catches on is the work, Marcus replied, not the name. The name helps people remember the work, Elijah countered, a decades-old friendly argument. You know I'm right about this. We'll see, Marcus smiled, turning back to Miles's calculations. We'll see. As night fell over Oakland, the Johnson household was filled with the comfortable sounds of family. Zora practicing her debate arguments in the living room, Miles explaining his science project to his grandmother, Elijah and Marcus debating implementation strategies for their next project in Kenya. From humble beginnings to global impact, from a contested airplane seat to industry influence, Marcus Johnson's journey had been defined not by the barriers he'd faced, but by his steady determination to move past them, creating ripples that extended far beyond his immediate reach, changing not just technologies but perspectives. Sometimes a single encounter at 35,000 feet could shift the ground below in unexpected ways. Sometimes standing your ground quietly could speak volumes. And sometimes the true measure of success wasn't what you achieved, but who you brought along with you on the journey. For Marcus Johnson, that had always been the point. Not the accolades or the recognition, but the paths made accessible for others. The doors held open so that the Zoras and Mileses of the world could walk through with confidence, heads held high, ready to take their rightful seats at tables where decisions were made and futures were shaped. And in the end, that was a legacy worth building. One drop of clean water, one moment of quiet dignity, one transformed perspective at a time.